high call series.
Morning, children. So now it's time for us to start with a new lesson, and that is about some other major features of our Earth. Okay. So the last part, actually, we have seen some details about the maps, globe, and all. Now we have to study the physical features of the Earth on a what we call an improved way. Okay, in a better way. We know Earth is the only planet on this Earth which supports life, and there are some basic reasons behind it. One, this is the only planet which has water, and this is also the only planet which has an atmosphere. Isn't it? Earth is the only planet in this universe which has an atmosphere. Okay. Now, we forget the water content first of all, and this is what we want: atmosphere. So, what do you mean by atmosphere? What do you mean by atmosphere? So, atmosphere is the thick layer of air that surrounds the Earth, isn't it? So, the Earth has got a thick layer of air, and this air is called the atmosphere. Right? So this is one of the most important features or the specialities of the Earth. It has a thick layer of air covering it. Okay, and there are some kind of changes that are happening in this atmosphere. So this layer of air which is around the Earth undergo some kinds of changes, and these changes, some are short for a short time, and some are for a long time. Okay, so weather is the kind of changes that happens in this atmosphere for a shorter period of time. Okay, for a shorter period of time, the changes that happens in the atmosphere for a shorter period of time is called the weather, and the changes that happens for a longer period of time is called the climate. Right? So there are some changes that is happening within this atmosphere, and the changes that happens for a shorter period of time is called the weather, and a longer period is called the climate. Right? So it's something like an average weather condition over a period of time. And an average weather condition over a period of time is called a climate. And the next level from climate, we go for seasons. So what are the major seasons? What are the major seasons on the Earth? We have a summer season. We have a winter season. We have a spring season, and we have a autumn season. So these are the four major seasons on the Earth: summer, winter, spring, autumn. So summer is very hot, winter is very cool, spring, fresh showers will be there. And it's a season when we have new plants and all, beginning of summer. Okay, before summer we have it. And autumn is actually before winter, when they shed the leaves, the plants, the trees shed their leaves, and they become ready to face the snowfall that they have to face. Right? So summer, winter, spring, and autumn are the four seasons. Okay. Now, based on the climate, there are a lot of changes happening actually. So if it is if the climate of a region has a lot of rain in that, the kinds of trees that grow over there or the animals who live over there also changes. If it is very hot over a region, we have seen camel. Camel lives in the desert region because yes, it can live in the desert region. It has specialities. So the animals, the plants, the human beings, and the lifestyles of the people also change based on the climatic conditions, right? So climate and weather has got such a great importance on this Earth's surface. So Earth is covered by a thick layer of air called atmosphere. There are some changes that is happening within this atmosphere, and that is called the weather and the climate. The changes that is happening for a shorter period of time is called the weather, and something that is happening for the longer time period is called the climate, or average weather conditions of a place over a period of time is called a climate. When the average climatic conditions are chosen, then we get seasons. The major seasons are summer, winter, spring, and autumn seasons, right? The lifestyle, the lifestyle of the people, then the kind of animals and the plants that grow and live in a particular region actually has some influence based on the climatic and weather conditions of the region. Okay. Now, what are the factors? What are the factors that influence the climate of a region? What are the factors? There are so many factors which can have its influence on the climatic conditions. For example, temperature. See, some regions on the earth receives direct heavy rainfall, sunlight, and some other regions do not receive that heat, isn't it? For example, if we check the map of India, on the western side we have a Thar desert, and the eastern side we have a rainforest, isn't it? So the Rajasthan region is in the west, and where we have the Thar desert, and in the east we have the northeastern states of Assam, Mozambique, Cherrapunji region, which receives the highest rainfall in the world. So, if the distribution of heat is the same on both these places, then will there be such a huge change in the climatic conditions over there? The weather conditions over there? One is a very thick forest regions, and the other is a very dry desert region. Okay, so even though sun is the major source for heat and light as far as the earth is concerned, the distribution of heat and light is not the same to different places, right? It's not the same. So when it is not the same, what happens? Yeah, some places receive too much heat and some places receive very less heat. So the places which receive too much heat becomes hotter, and the places which receive less heat becomes comparatively cooler. Okay, so distribution of a temperature is a one basic feature. There are so many other features also which actually plays a vital role in deciding the climatic and weather condition of a place. Okay, so we will start them one by one. So the first major reason or a factor that affects the climate of a region is a distance from the equator, right? So how far is a place located from the equator? Okay, we know so earth is more of a geoid shape, which is a bulge at the center and a flattened on top, isn't it? Yes. And if this is the equator, these are the other latitudes. Okay, so this region around the equator actually receives very high sunlight, isn't it? When we go north or south, what happens? Yeah, see, this is where we receive the sunlight around the equator, but on top, the sun rays has to travel a lot more than that of how much it has to travel to reach the equator. Means, see, there is a distance, there is a difference in the distance. Here the sunlight reaches only up to here, but here it has to travel extra. So when it travels extra, what happens? It becomes weaker. Isn't it? Yes. So the place which is very close to the sun or where the sunlight can reach faster is hotter. Huh? And becomes cooler where, yeah, it takes a lot of time. So definitely that will be cooler. Okay. So the places around the equator receives a lot of sunlight directly from the sun, and that is happening at a very short distance when compared to some other areas on the earth. So the area around the equator will be hotter than the other regions. And as we move towards the poles, the sunlight have to travel a lot more distance to reach the land, and as it travels more, it becomes weak, and the heat and the light in that also will become reduced. Right? So the areas around the equator are hotter than the polar regions. So based on this, we have got three different zones. One is called torrid zone. The second is called temperate zone. And the other is called frigid zone. Zone means area. Torrid means very hot. Torrid means very hot. Temperate means moderate. Frigid means very cool. So we know equator is 0 degree latitude, and then we have 2 or 3 more major latitudes on both the sides, isn't it? Yes, here we have a 23.5 degree north latitude. Here we have a 66.5 degree north latitude, and this is a 90 degree north, isn't it? The bottom also we have a 23.5 degree south latitude and a 66.5 degree south latitude, and this is a 90 degree south latitude, isn't it? So this one 0 degree is known as a equator. Then 23.5 degree north latitude is known as a Tropic of Cancer, and 23.5 degree south latitude is known as a Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, so the area that lies in between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn along with the equator is called the torrid zone. Okay, so what is a torrid zone? The areas on either sides of equator up to Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere and Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere is known as the torrid zone. Okay, so what do you mean by the torrid zone? The torrid zone is the hottest zone on the surface of Earth. It lies around the equator. This region receives the sunlight directly from the sun and is one of the hottest region in that area. Okay, and this lies in between the 23.5 degree north latitude to 23.5 degree south latitude, from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn through the equator, right? So this region receives a high amount of direct sunlight and it is the hottest area. Okay, now above Tropic of Cancer and below Tropic of Capricorn. So here 66.5 degree north latitude is known as an Arctic Circle, isn't it? And 66.5 degrees south latitude is known as the Antarctic Circle. Isn't it? The Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. So, in between the Arctic Circle and the Tropic of Cancer, there is an area. Okay, I am now shading that particular area so that you can easily identify that. Right? So, this area in between Tropic of Cancer and the Arctic Circle and the Tropic of Capricorn and the Antarctic Circle is an area. Okay, this area and this area. So, they receive moderate sunshine. It's not too hot as it is on the torrid region, but less heater. Okay, it's not that hot as the sun rays that falls on the torrid zone. So the regions above Tropic of Cancer and Arctic Circle in the northern hemisphere and Tropic of Cancer and Antarctic Circle in the southern hemisphere receives moderate sunshine. It's neither too hot nor too cool. Okay, so this region is something that receives temperate zone. What do we call it? A temperate zone. So where do we have temperate zones? In the northern hemisphere, we have temperate zones in between Arctic Circle and the Tropic of Cancer. And the southern hemisphere, we have a Tropic of Capricorn and the Antarctic Circle. Because these regions receive comparatively less sun rays than the torrid zone. Okay. Now, in between the Arctic Circle and the North Pole, this region, and Antarctic Circle and the South Pole, it's very cold. It's so cold that you can hardly have any sunlight over there. Okay, so those regions are very cold and that region is known as a frigid zone. Okay, so the coldest regions which are around the north and the south poles are known as a frigid zone because they do not receive much sunlight and is very cold. See, as we travel away from the equator, either north or south, the climate changes, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, it's very hot along the equator, and as we move north or south, the intensity of the heat decreases and it becomes very cold by the time we reach the polar regions. Okay, so that is how the distance from the equator plays a vital role in deciding the climate of a region. Okay, so the equator receives the maximum amount of sunlight, the hottest sun rays on the earth. It's very hot in this region, and as we go north and south, it decreases, it reduces and reaches very cold climatic conditions on the North Pole and South Pole. So based on this, we have three climatic zones: the torrid zones, the temperate zone, and the frigid zone. In between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, the 23.5 degree north and 23.5 degree south latitudes along the equator is the hottest regions, okay, which is called the torrid zone. In between Arctic Circle and the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere, Tropic of Capricorn and Antarctic Circle in the southern hemisphere, the sun rays are not that hot as it was in the torrid zone. So they receive moderate sunshine, and that is known as a temperate zone. Right? From the Arctic Circle to the North Pole, 90 degree North Pole, and the Antarctic Circle to the polar region, the Southern Pole, 90 degrees South. They hardly receive any sunshine during the daytime, and it is very cold. And as it is too cold, the region is known as a frigid zone. Okay, and this is how distance from this equator influences the climate or weather conditions of a region. Got it? Okay. Now, the second factor is altitude. Or, yeah, altitude or, yes, height from the sea level. So, we know as we go high on a mountain, okay, as we go high on a mountain, the climate will be cooler. Okay, so climatic conditions that are found on the mountain regions are comparatively cooler than the plain regions. Okay, the location, for example, if this is equator and there are two places which are of equal distance from the equator, but one can be cooler and the second can be hotter, because here in this region, yeah, it is located very high above the sea level, whereas this can be on the sea level. So based on the height of a place from the sea level, the weather conditions change. So what are the major changes that happens there? So basically it becomes cool. Okay, as we go high on the altitude, what basically happens is it becomes cooler, right? Even during the summer season, the locations and the land areas along the plain regions will be hotter, whereas on hills will be cooler. See, it's during the summer season that we go for hill stations, na? Ooty, Kodaikanal, or the North Indian stations like Nainital or Dehradun or Shimla, Darjeeling, Mussoorie. Huh? All these are the famous hill stations because they are cooler during the summer season. Why they are cooler even during the summer season? Because they are at a high altitude. Altitude means what? Yes, the distance from the sea level. So all these hill stations, Ooty or Kodaikanal or Shimla or Nainital or Darjeeling or Mussoorie or Dehradun, okay, Kulu Manali. So all these regions are located at a height much high above the average sea level, and as we go high in the altitude, the temperature decreases. Okay, so hills and the areas around the hill always will have a cooler climate than the plain regions. Okay, so that is the second factor, altitude or the height from the sea level. The regions above the sea level or something like the hills and the mountains will have a cooler climate because as we go high in the altitude, the temperature decreases. It becomes cooler, right? Now, the third factor is distance from the sea. Distance from the sea. Let us consider two cities, okay, two Indian cities. Mumbai, then Delhi. Okay, so now we have got two cities with us. One is Mumbai and the second is Delhi. See, when we check the climatic conditions of these two regions, we can see Mumbai is warmer even during the winter and cooler even during the summer. Okay, Mumbai is warmer during winter. Okay, so it's warmer during the winter and cooler during the summer. But when we consider Delhi, it's too cooler during winter and too hot during summer. Why is it so? Why Mumbai is warmer during the winter and cooler during the summer, but Delhi cooler, very cool during winter and very hot during summer? Because Mumbai is on a Arabian Sea, whereas Delhi does not have any seas or oceans near that. So the regions which are close to the oceans and the seas, okay, the regions which are close to the oceans and the seas like Mumbai or Chennai or Visakhapatnam, okay, these regions will have a moderate climate throughout the year. Okay, they will have a moderate climate throughout the year, whereas the regions away from the sea coast areas like Delhi will have extreme climates. Extreme climates means, if it is hot, if it is summer, it's very hot. If it is winter, it's very cool. Right? So, the regions which are on the coastal region, okay, either seas or ocean, doesn't matter. But if they are on a sea coast, then they will have a moderate climate throughout the season, throughout the year. Right? But the regions that are very much interior, which are far away from the sea coast regions, will definitely have extreme climatic conditions. Means it will be extremely hot during the summer and extremely cool during the winter. Okay, and how the sea coast regions have a moderate climatic conditions. Huh? So what happens is that there are two kinds of winds. We call it a sea breeze and a land breeze. Okay. So now we will check what happens there and then we will get an idea regarding why the coastal regions have a moderate climate. Okay. Fine. So this is land and this is a sea or ocean. Okay. So during the daytime, what happens is we have a sun here. Na? The sun rays fall on both land and the water. So what happens here is land becomes hotter first. What happens? The soil absorbs the heat and the atmosphere that is above the land also becomes hotter. Right? So there is a problem when the air becomes hotter. That is, if it becomes hotter, it will start to rise in the air. Means when it becomes hotter, it becomes light. Its weight reduces and it goes up. So when the lighter air goes up, what happens? See, there is air here also. Na? Atmosphere is there above water also. But the problem is, water takes more time than the land to absorb heat. Okay? Water takes more time than the land to absorb heat. Right? So what happens? The air above the water will be cool. Right? The air above the water is cool. But when this air goes up, what happens? This air occupies the space. Okay? So when the lighter air goes up, what happens? The cool air flows from the water to the land. Okay? Now, the air over here comes down and occupies this place. And this air is going up, And as we go up, what happens? Temperature decreases. Means air becomes cooler. And this flow over here. Okay? So during the daytime, land becomes hotter faster than the water. Okay? So the air above the land rises up. And into that space, the cool air above the water flows in. Right? So as the air from the sea flows towards the land, this is called sea breeze. What is a sea breeze? Yeah, a sea breeze happens during the day. It is the cool air above the sea water flows towards the land to replace the air which got heated up and rose up into the air. Right? Now, during night what happens? See, last year in the 4th class when we studied about deserts, we have seen deserts have extreme climatic conditions. Isn't it? Yeah, it's very hot during the day and very cold during the night. Why? Why? Yes, the sand can very easily absorb heat and leave out heat, isn't it? Yes. So what happens? The land cools first. The land cools down. So when the land cools down, what happens? The water is still hot, isn't it? The sea is still hot. Now, the hot air is now on the sea. Okay. So this is land, this is water. Right? It's night now. The land got cooled down. The air above the land also is cold. But now what happens? The sea is still warmer. Because water takes more time to leave out the heat. Right? So the water is still hot. It's still warmer. And the air above this sea also is warmer. If it is warmer, then what happens? Yes, it goes up. And the cool air that is above the land flows in towards the sea. Again, the same process. This goes up. Yeah, as we go up, temperature decreases. This cools down and flows in this way. Okay. So during the daytime, the wind comes from the sea, and during the night time, the wind comes from the land, and this is known as a land breeze. Okay. So there is see, neither the land nor the water is getting warmer. The air above that is always getting rotated, isn't it? So both during day and night, this is happening. So let it be winter, doesn't matter. Summer, doesn't matter. Rainy season, doesn't matter. This process gets on this coastal region. Okay? During the day, sea breeze happens. The cooler air above the water flows into the land. Automatically, the land becomes cooler first. And as the air gets hotter, it goes up. The cooler air from the sea continues to flow in. Okay, so this is the reason the cities on the sea coast, like Mumbai or Chennai or Vizag or Kolkata, are cool. Okay, do we have any such facility in the regions like Delhi or the interior cities, the cities which are in the middle of the country? No. So what happens? Yes, we always have extreme climatic conditions in those regions. What do we have? We have extreme climatic conditions. Okay. So the third factor is the distance from the sea. Okay. Third factor is distance from the sea, and based on the distance from the sea, the different regions have changes in the climatic conditions. The cities or the regions that are there along the coastal region will have a moderate climate throughout the year because of the presence of a sea breeze and a land breeze. As no such facilities are available for the cities, those that are away from the coastal regions will have extreme climatic conditions. It's hot throughout the summer and cold, extremely cold throughout the winter. Okay. Now, what is a sea breeze? Yeah, during the daytime, the land gets warmer, the air above the land becomes hotter and becomes lighter, and it goes up in the air. Okay, the cool air above the sea water flows in, replacing that place where the air on the land rose up in the air. Okay, and this happens in a cyclic process because the air that rose up above the land, as it goes high, it becomes cooler because temperature decreases as we go up in the altitude. Okay, so this continues in the cyclic process during the daytime, and that is called a sea breeze because the breeze is flowing onto the land from the sea, right? Now, during the night time, the land become cooler faster than the water. The water will be warmer. The air above that will be still warmer, and this warm air will go up, and the cool air above the land will start to flow into the place from where the water went up, so the air went up above the water. As it goes up, it becomes cooler, and then it goes on a cyclic process. So days and nights around the coastal regions experience a sea breeze and a land breeze, which keeps the climatic conditions of the region under check. Because of this reason, the region around the coastal areas will have a moderate climate, whereas the regions away from the coastal regions will have extreme climatic conditions. Right? So the next factor which you can have, that can decide the climate of a region is a direction of wind. Is there any direction for wind? Yeah, what do you mean by wind? Wind is nothing else but a moving air. Okay, air is different, wind is different. Air is a mixture of gas. Air is a mixture of gas, and the moving air is called a wind. Okay, we can feel it. We cannot feel air, but we can feel the wind. Okay, wind blows, that we know, but is there a particular direction for this wind to blow? We have just seen the what we call it land breeze and the sea breeze. Yes, from the cooler region to the hotter region. Cooler region to the hotter region. Okay, so we know Earth is spherical in shape, and we have a isn't it? And this is the movement or the rotation movement of the Earth, right? So we know this is the hottest region. So these tropical regions are comparatively cooler, right? So what happens? Yes, the wind blows in this direction. Okay, from the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Cancer is in the north and Tropic of Capricorn is in the south. From these two tropical belts, the wind will be blowing towards the equator. Right? Now, from there, from Tropic of Capricorn to the right, and again okay, so these latitudes like the equator, the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, or the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle and the polar region, they are very powerful belts, right? So they have variations in the temperature levels, and along with the movement of the earth, the rotation, they have a particular direction as far as the wind is concerned. The wind specifically blows in one particular direction. So from which region to which region, in which direction does the wind blow? Okay, that can decide the temperature levels of a region. They can decide the temperature levels of a region, and that in a way decides the climatic conditions of a region. Right? The next one is rain and humidity. Rain and humidity. Rainfall is a factor which decides the climate because, yeah, we have a season based on that, isn't it? Rainy season. So, is the distribution of a rain the same across the country? No. In the beginning, I've told you, we have Rajasthan and the northeastern states where not only the distribution of heat, the distribution of rain also is not equal across this region, isn't it? Yeah, some region, Assam region, this is high rainfall, whereas Rajasthan region, this is very less rainfall, isn't it? So, distribution of rain, just like that of the distribution of temperature, is also not unique across the world, across the globe, and that is another factor which decides the climatic conditions of a region. Now, we have a thing called humidity. So, what do you mean by humidity? Humidity is nothing else but the amount of moisture or water vapor present in the air. So, in the air, we have got some amount of moisture. Moisture means water vapor. Okay. So, if the air has more water vapor, it becomes more humid, right? And if it doesn't have more water vapor, it becomes less humid, right? So, we have seen now the land breeze and sea breeze. So, the breeze that comes from the sea to the land always have very high amount of moisture in that. Okay, it's very humid. The result, we end up sweating. Okay, so if it is a high humidity, if the humidity increases, we sweat a lot, right? And that is why the places near to the sea areas will be something like we call it a sultry condition. It's humid, it's hot, but it sweats a lot. Okay, so rains and humidity, the distribution of rain is not the same throughout the globe, and that affects the climatic conditions of the region, and humidity also varies. The regions close to the seashore areas will have air with a high rate of humidity, high humidity, and the interior regions will have a less humidity, isn't it? Yes, so that also decides the climatic conditions of a region. Then another factor is ocean currents. So what do you mean by currents? Current means flow. Okay, we know oceans are huge water bodies, and as far as we are concerned, what we know is they are still water, isn't it? No. Oceans also have water flowing inside that. Oceans also have a water flowing inside that. See, we know that if this is a globe, north and south pole, equator, this is a frigid zone, isn't it? This is also, yeah, frigid zone, and this is a torrid zone, isn't it? Means this region is hot and this is a cool, this is cool. So whenever there is a difference in temperature, either in air or water, there happens a flow. There happens a flow. Means from the cold region to the hot region, it flows. Okay. So the polar regions are very cold. The water in this region are also very cold. And this cold water flows towards the equator and it becomes hot. And as it becomes hot, it flows back. By then what happens? Yeah, the fresh water from there will be coming back and occupying the space. Okay, the same thing is happening with the southern hemisphere also. Okay, so this movement of water in the oceans, both in the northern and the southern pole, are called ocean currents. Right? So what is ocean currents? Yeah, the movement of water based on the difference in temperature of the water, sea water, right, from the polar regions towards the equator is called the ocean currents. See, we know that iceberg, yeah, the great incident of Titanic, the ship which met with an accident in the Atlantic Ocean, isn't it? So Atlantic Ocean is a busy ocean. Very busy ocean. It lies in between the American continents and the Europe and Africa. Okay, so imagine this is a American continent, and this is Africa. So this region is Greenland, right? So that is a frigid zone area. Greenland is completely covered with huge ice cubes. And sometimes what happens is these ice cubes will get separated. Ice cube means huge mountains. Okay, they will get separated from the mainland and there is a flow of water. Now we have just discussed ocean currents. Yes, from the cold region to the warmer region. Isn't it? From the cold region to the warmer region, because yes, this is the equator. It passes through Africa. Isn't it? So these ice cubes also start to flow down into this region because of this ocean currents. Right? So they happen to have such a huge iceberg which got a flood in the Atlantic Ocean because of this currents, into which the great ship Titanic went and hit. What happened? Titanic sunk. Right? So this is the region. So this is around the equator. This is actually the torrid zone. It's very hot zone, and ice cubes cannot float in that, can get formed in that region. But still, we find a lot of icebergs in this region because they are coming from the frigid zone in the North Pole. Okay, so this is an example. The floating of icebergs is an example to make it sure that there is a movement for the water in the oceans. Okay, they are not a still water. As we keep a bucket of water or a cup of water, it's not that still. There is a movement happening within the water in the oceans and the seas that is based on the difference in temperature. From the cooler regions to the hotter regions, the water flow. And this flow is called ocean currents, right? So these are the major factors which affect the climate and weather conditions of a region, and this weather conditions actually defines the lifestyle of the people over there. When we check, the people who belong to different climatic conditions wear different kinds of clothes. They have different types of food. Then they have different kinds of houses also. Isn't it? For example, we people, we are living on the plains. We have got a comparatively better climate, and we use cotton clothes or different polyester clothes are there. We use woolen clothes during winter. And our houses are totally on the ground. But when we go to the North India, say Kashmir and all, throughout the year they will be wearing Woolen clothes because it's very cool over there. But when you go to Rajasthan, they will be mostly wearing cotton clothes because it's very hot over there. And the kind of houses in Rajasthan, yeah, they mostly prefer tents or mud built homes. Why? Because it can keep the house cool. But when we go to northeastern states like Arunachal or Assam on the river banks of this Brahmaputra river, we can see houses that are built on poles. On top of this, we have the house. Why? Yeah, there is a river flowing here, and that can get a flood anytime. Okay, even if there is a flood, the flood water won't reach the house and the house won't get damaged. That's the only thing. So the climatic conditions actually designs the way we live in a region also. Okay, so Earth is a planet which has got a cover of air known as atmosphere. There are so many different kinds of changes that is happening inside of this atmosphere. Some do last for shorter times, and if the changes are there for shorter times, then we call it a weather. If it is for a longer times, we call it a climate, and if it is still longer, we call it a seasons. We have 4 seasons: winter, summer, spring, and autumn. So when we compare the different factors which can affect the weather and the climatic conditions of a region, we have got the 6 factors. Distance from the equator is the first factor. Equator and the regions around the equator receives a heavy direct sunlight, so that will be very hot. Above and below equator means above the tropic regions, the intensity of sunlight will be comparatively less. That is known as the temperate zones, and the polar regions are frigid zones where, yes, the amount of sunlight that they receive is comparatively very less. Okay, so based on the distance we travel from the equator, there will be difference in the climatic conditions. Second, altitude or height from the sea level. The higher we go, the cooler it becomes. Okay, so the plain land areas around the sea level will be comparatively warmer or hotter than the places on a high altitude. Even during summer, the places of a high altitude will have a cooler climate, and that is why hill stations are very famous during the summer season. Right? Third one, distance from the sea. The regions around the seashore areas will have a moderate climate throughout the year because of a sea breeze and a land breeze. Okay, but the regions which are very far away from the coastal regions will have a extreme climates during the seasons. Extreme heat during the summer season and extreme cold during the winter season. Now, direction of the wind. So, wind has a speciality that it moves from the cooler region to the hotter region. From the cooler region to the hotter region, and there are different belts of air moving, wind moving in different directions across the equator, from the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, from the Arctic and Antarctic Circle to the Tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, from the polar regions, the poles, to the Arctic and Antarctic Circle. They also affect the climatic conditions of a region. Then, rain and humidity. Some regions of the earth receives high rainfall, whereas some other regions receives very less rainfall. So, based on this distribution of rain on the earth, different regions have different climatic conditions, right? Then, humidity. The amount of water vapor that the wind carries is called humidity. Regions close to the coastal regions will have high humidity, and the climatic conditions can be very sultry. And the interior continental regions, or the regions which are far away from the coastal regions, will be less humid. Right? Now, ocean currents. The water in the oceans also do move just like the wind above. Okay, so the movement of the ocean waters are based on the temperature levels. The regions around the equator are comparatively hotter, than the polar regions which are very cooler, right? So from cooler to hotter regions, there is a continuous flow of water, and from hotter to cooler regions also there is a reverse flow. So this flow of water within the ocean based on the difference in temperature is called the ocean currents, and this also decides or is a factor in deciding the climatic and weather conditions of a region. Human beings have adopted different lifestyles based on the difference in the climatic conditions of the different regions. Okay, so that is the lesson part, many ways of living, weather and the climate, right? So you can read this lesson in the PDF which is also there along with this particular video, and then after that we will do the exercise part of this lesson. Okay.